Good morning, everybody. We will go ahead and get started. I just want to note that before we do roll, George Morales is at a conference actually related to affordable housing, so he's not joining us today. Clerk?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales. Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willits.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. So we'll jump right into it. Happy to welcome the Office of Police Accountability for your semi-annual and actually probably 6-month marker report. Welcome. I don't think so.
How about now? Oh, perfect. Well, good morning, and thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. Off to a strong start. Okay. Well, good morning again, and it is a pleasure to be with you today and provide you with an update on the Office of Police Accountability. Your charge to this office has been clear. Establish best practices for greater transparency and accountability within our policing and meaningfully engage with the community. Almost 6 months into this role, this office is working diligently with that focus. At a high level, here are some updates on the work of the OPA, and I will get into greater detail in some subsequent slides on some of these. Starting off with staffing. With current hires, this office will be fully staffed with the addition of an analyst, and we anticipate beginning that process here shortly. By the summer of 2025, we will have an intern working with us and be underway on some collaborative work with the BSU Criminal Justice Graduate Program. Turning to critical incidents, OPA issued its first critical incident investigative report in January of this year. There are currently 5 under review by our office right now. 3 of those will have reports issued in early March. I anticipate the remaining 2 to be issued by the end of April. There are currently 4 that are in various stages of review by the Critical Incident Task Force, Boise Police Department, or both. You can see the date of each of these incidents on the slide. And just a brief reminder about the difference between the Critical Incident Task Force review and the Boise Police Department review. The Critical Incident Task Force is an agency that will investigate the critical incident for criminality. So looking at the officer's actions and deciding whether or not there was any violation of law, and that critical incident task force then gets passed on to the reviewing prosecuting attorney, who will then decide whether or not charges against the officer will be filed. To my knowledge, there has never been an officer charged in Boise City Police for a shooting, and they have all resulted in declination letters to prosecute. The Boise Police Department does an internal review that is done by the Office of Internal Affairs, and it is an administrative review. It looks at policy and procedure violations. So moving on to intakes. Intakes capture the community contact with the Office of Police Accountability, either by a phone call, an email, or submission of the form that's provided on our website. The number of contacts for 2023 and 2024 to date are here, as well as the data that's been shared by BPD. Finally, with appeals, there are very few appeals. We have 3 from 2023 and 0 from 2024 to date. I wanted to move into critical incidents with a little bit more detail. If you had the chance to review the report that we published in January, you would have noticed there are some differences to the reports that were published by previous administrations. First of all, the format. We took a very thoughtful approach to how to structure and what to provide in these reports. with a focus on how can we provide robust information and how can we make it easy for all the information to live in one document to provide that information. So in the current the current format, we report on all individuals by name, and that includes all involved community members and the officers involved. We include the findings of the Critical Incident Task Force in summary fashion. We also include the declination declination letter typically, and we identify both the reviewing agency and the reviewing prosecuting attorney's office. We review the Boise Police Department findings, and this is something that, to my knowledge, has not been done previously. What that involves is a summary of all of the findings of the administrative review, and that can involve policy findings, tactical findings, equipment, training, things of that nature. If there were policy violations, those would be included as well. So we are providing transparency, I believe, for the first time in what the Boise Police Department is finding and reporting. In addition, there has been some questions that have arisen about reporting about BPD's findings, and I made it very clear, and I want you all to know as well, that we do not report anything that involves personnel records. So to give you an example, if there was a policy violation by an officer in the way that the BPD responded to a critical incident, you can think of it as a continuum. If it's a minor policy violation, something that you most often will see is failure to activate an on-body video camera. If that policy violation is noted, Office of Internal Affairs, in consultation with leadership, will decide whether or not that's a training issue, whether that's something that can be resolved with a conversation, or if that's somebody who has had this problem repeatedly and regularly, then that may end up resulting in some sort of personnel action. That would never be included in our reports because of course, that is protected and exempt from public disclosure. The next thing that we are now identifying and reporting on is contributing and mitigating factors. I think this is the one that is going to provide the most insight to all of you and to the public about what's going on with these critical incidents. We are only a few in on the review of those in our shop, and the contributing and mitigating factors are going to help me share with you why are we getting into these situations with critical incidents. So what kind of factors contribute to it? Did the individual show up with a firearm? Did the individual fail to follow instructions or cooperate? Did the individual appear to be dysregulated? And that might take many, many different forms. Maybe the officer is unable to communicate with that individual effectively, or the individual is no longer tethered to kind of the facts and time surrounding him or her. So those are the kinds of things that we hope to identify in contributing factors. Mitigating factors could be a lot of different things. They include the officer's thought process, what they perceived at the time, what their thought process was in de-escalation, or perhaps even utilizing less lethal tools. Was their demeanor inappropriate given the circumstances? Did they try and approach the individual with an appropriate level of assertion of authority? Things of that nature. And did they take the individual into custody securely? Did they render medical aid if that was necessary? So all of those kinds of things, when we put them together, we will hopefully have a picture for you on why we are ending up in these critical incidents and what can we do going forward to perhaps influence these upstream. Finally, what we do is in these reports is include recommendations, including training, equipment, policies, and procedures. And of course, as those come to you, you will have some decisions to make when I have information from numerous reports to put together and give to you. When these investigative reports are published, they will be accompanied by a news release, and they will be reported on the OPA website, and you have that OPA website up there on the slide. With the report on the website, our effort was to provide ease of access with a link to the Boise Police Department website, which now includes, I'm very happy to see that this has happened, access to the on-body video, the Critical Incident Task Force report, press releases, and when appropriate, charging and conviction information. So we really worked together with Boise Police Department to get all of this information together in one spot, free of charge, easy access. The Critical Incident Task Force and the on-body video are oftentimes either edited and or redacted for privacy. The goal in the way we have structured these reports and links is to provide greater transparency in the officer-involved shootings from the process, investigations, findings, recommendations, and ultimately to help us find trends if there are some. Finally, with critical incidents, I wanted to give you a little bit of insight in what we are looking at. The first one, holistic decision-making. Was there adequate communication, contact, pre-planning, and planning for variables? Was there a reasonable command presence? If there was time and opportunity, were less lethal tools utilized before resorting to lethal force? Was there adequate detail in the report writing? Does it include critical decision-making and tactical approach? Was the involved individual taken into custody safely? And finally, customer service. How did the officer approach, lead, or continue? And was it with the appropriate level of assertion of authority? Moving now on to the intake portion of our work. As you can see from the graphic on the left, and I apologize, this is my work and not CE's work. I'm sure if CE had done this, you would have been able to see it a lot better. And when we have an analyst, this will look a lot better too, I promise. But as you can see on the left, only a little over the third of the contact with the OPA community constitutes a complaint. And of those, by and large, the complaint is about duty and performance of the officer, followed by conduct unbecoming and constitutional right violations. A very small percentage of those are substantiated, and this will be something we report on in the future with more detail. We are in the process of examining intake data points, and we'll be working with the incoming analyst to better develop robust data points and determine how they can best be used. Finally, on intake, I wanted to just highlight the definitions for what constitutes each of these categories. And I think this is another point that's kind of due for some further analysis and some improvement. But as it stands now, a complaint is an allegation that meets jurisdictional requirements for this office, and that is that it's filed against a Boise Police Department employee or officer, and it's made within 90 days of the act. And if the allegations are true, it would constitute a violation of policy or law. An appeal is a complaint filed with Boise Police Department and then appealed to the Office of Police Accountability.
I'm going to pause you just for a second.
Sure. They're rolling?
We'll take them down.
Oh.
We've just got some, for those watching, we've got some technical issues we're going to resolve here. Sorry, Nicole.
Oh, that's okay. I thought maybe you were going to say you'd heard enough and I could be good.
Dismissed.
Dismissed, no more.
Slides from right here. Hold that. Okay. It's just the arrow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we will see if this works. Okay, so a critical incident is a complaint filed and related to a specific critical incident. An inquiry does not meet jurisdictional requirements, but the community member is provided a response with guidance, and that usually takes the form of a referral or information. This is something that we have focused on in terms of providing better customer service. We all know government is hard to navigate. it's a lot between local, state, federal, and sometimes individuals who need help don't know where to go. So Kathy in our office does an exceptional job of listening to people and taking the extra time to make sure that they get where they need to be. And then finally, information only. These communications are probably the most challenging. They are outside the jurisdiction of our office or timetable, or there is no identified issue to investigate and no further action is taken formally. But what Kathy has done in our office is oftentimes these individuals demonstrate to our office that they could use some additional support in the community. And Kathy will oftentimes reach out to Boise Police Department's behavioral health teams, who sometimes these individuals will be known to them and they can go check on them. And if not, we can send them on for officers to make contact with that individual and see how they can help connect those person to services. Those persons. Okay, moving on to community engagement. This is one of my favorite parts of this job. I just love this part. Meetings with the leaders in our community have been meaningful and productive, and I've highlighted some of them here. Policing in our community engages and affects many different individuals and groups, and it is a priority that I make myself available to them and help foster communication and assistance. These interactions will help inform trends, data collection, training, and practices and procedures. And I do just want to add that I've had such a warm welcome from all of these individuals and groups, and they are welcoming the opportunity to collaborate with this office in terms of how individuals that they have members or are, associated with can interact in the best way possible with Boise Police. Okay, looking ahead, come fall 2024, I anticipate having a full report to you, and that will also now include auditing, analysis, and recommendation. That auditing piece is really important. And you can see that auditing piece touches a lot of different areas. Citizen complaints, the Office of Internal Affairs investigations, Boise Police actions, that's quite broad and can include a variety of things. We will be looking at Boise Police Department data. And of course, we can audit anything at the request of the chief as well. So that is something that I'm really looking forward to, and hoping that with the information that we glean from those functions, I can bring you back something meaningful that you can really understand how we are approaching policing and where we are succeeding and where we could use some additional work, focus, and resources. Data analysis. Before I dive into that, I really want to talk about data collection and why we need robust data. It will help us identify patterns in crime and policing. It will help us allocate resources for the police and the community, help us examine community program funding. It will inform decisions and increase public access and transparency. So how do we get there? Well, I've started the process of consulting with experts in our community. I've been collaborating with BPD on how and when they are collecting data. And I've identified that we probably need to engage in more surveys, interviews, and focus groups. The data is only as good as you put in, and we have a great opportunity right now to really identify and expand some robust data, both from Boise Police Department and from our vantage point. One of the individuals I met with in the criminal justice program at Boise State University, we've met with her twice now for a couple of hours each time, and she has gone through and really identified and demonstrated to us that we should be and can collect far more data than we currently are, and how that data will help inform our policing going forward. So this is something that I don't want to say there's a hole in this, because obviously there is data being collected and has been collected from both Boise Police Department and from OPA. But I think with the changing community and the policing, we need to have far more robust data to move forward in a thoughtful way. So data analysis, like I said, I've already met with one individual from Boise State, but I intend to identify and meet with far more experts in this area, both locally that can speak to issues in our policing or nationally in terms of what have cities either similar to Boise or who are a little bit larger or seeing more issues, how they've approached this issue and how we can adopt those things in Boise that will help us inform our policing going forward. Boise Police Department, unbeknownst to me, was working on this exact thing. And we, during one of our weekly consultations, determined that we were both on the same page and moving forward. And it will be critical that we align on this. Boise Police Department and the Office of Police Accountability need to share definitions of data points so we can compare accurately and meaningfully what they're collecting and what we're collecting and how we can interpret those together. And finally, I need to hear from the community and the mayor and all of you city council about what you would like to see us track and analyze and report on. So I'm hoping in the fall that I'm able to come back to you with a robust list of data points that we are starting to collect, both with BPD and OPA, and what we hope to do with that data. And of course, I will be open to recommendations from you as well. So finally, leads me well to my recommendations. Come fall, the third thing we will be focusing on is recommendations to you, and that is based upon the findings in our audits, investigations, critical incidents, complaints, and community concerns, our collaboration with BPD on trending issues, business practices, and data collection, and of course, recommendations from you. So with that, Madam Mayor and City Council members, I stand for questions.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, go ahead.
Director McKay, thank you so much. I really appreciate the way that you're focusing on the standardization of the data that you're looking at, not just for today's inquiries, but for the future. I think that lends a lot of credibility.
I can't tell if you're.
Oh,
yeah.
can you? Okay. I think that lends a lot of credibility to the office, and really look forward to reviewing the findings and the recommendations moving forward. So just wanted to thank you for that work.
Thank you, Councilmember Stead. Appreciate that.
Go ahead,
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Corliss.
Director McKay, thank you very much for this presentation. For me, very informative. I'm so happy to see the work that you're doing, and especially around data analysis. I think I agree with you. I think it's
Kathy,
the way we.
Can you do the mic?
I'm sorry.
Just so Councilmember Willits can hear us.
Okay, here we go. Anyways, the data analysis, I think, is really critical as we look to inform those decisions that we need to make. And glad to see that you're reaching out to community organizations like Criminal Justice at BSU and looking nationally also. I do have one question on the definitions that you provided. And that was on, so I have to look back at my notes here. It was called inquiry. Can you maybe just give me an example just in my mind so I can understand that? I guess it's what constitutes an inquiry.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councilmember Corliss. This is something we need to work on because this is something we have struggled with, the way these are categorized. I'm not sure why inquiries were separated out from information only. The only distinction that we have been able to come up with is whether or not we have responded. So in an inquiry, we will respond, and that would be somebody complaining about something, let's say an assistant U.S. attorney. Well, we say, okay, you need to go to the U.S. attorney's office. That's a federal function, not a state or a local function. And so there's some education, there is some help getting that person to the right place. It might be Social Security, it could be the Department of Health and Welfare, it could be juvenile corrections. So just taking that extra step instead of saying, hey, that's not our shop, we say, not our shop, but let us help you get to the right place. Information only is something that has come to us and we cannot do anything with it. And more often than not, It will be somebody who is perhaps dysregulated for a variety of reasons. It could be a mental health crisis. It could be substance abuse. It could be any number of things. And it is, we are unable to discern anything that we can do to assist that individual other than refer it to perhaps the behavioral health team with Boise Police Department for a welfare check.
Madam Mayor, just a quick follow-up.
course.
So the inquiry, just to make sure I have it set in my mind, is not a general inquiry about someone in the police department or something that's happening. I saw an officer run a red light and reported.
So if it was, yes, thank you. If it was an officer, I saw an officer run a red light, that would be a complaint. And the process that we utilize currently is we will take in all of the information for the complaint. We refer it over to the Office of Internal Affairs. They investigate it and send us back their findings. And from those findings, we determine, was it fair, thorough, complete? And if so, we will communicate those findings back to the complainant. And if we don't agree with those findings, we consult with our investigator and come up with a decision of our own.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
question and a couple comments. Thank you, Nicole. If you could go back, you have a slide about the critical incident reports. And as you're going back, so to this point, we've gotten one critical incident report that we got not too long ago. We've got 3 more that we'll see in March, and we've got 2 more that we'll see in April. And at this point, those are all the ones that we have available to actually review. And then at some point, there'll be 4 more that are pending that will come our way. Did I get that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Councilmember Halliburton. The 4 that are coming to us, from my read of the documents that I can see in the shared software we have with Internal Affairs, they are very close. Most of those are very close to coming.
Well, I just want to thank you for the timeliness in getting these back to us. Knowing that we'll have 3 more in March and 2 more in April is really, really good to know when they're actually going to be here. I think that's super helpful for us. And I want to commend you on the first one as well. I think it's so important that these critical incident reports be consistent with each other, that they be very objective, be detailed, and be transparent. That's kind of what we've wanted with these reports all along. And I know that there's sometimes some heartburn of like, hey, what is it going to say? Whose name is going to be in here? But again, I think that that is so important, that transparency and that objectiveness and consistency, because it allows council, it involves leadership, all the awesome folks at BPD to really look and understand where our issues are, what trends may be there, and how we can actually be working together to move forward on those. So I want to say thank you again for those detailed reports. And I really am excited that each of these will have that same exact format all the way through, so we'll know what we're looking at. And then I guess just one more request when it comes to data analysis. If there are things that we're looking for, this may be one of them already, but I think it would be helpful for council to know, as we're collecting data, how much of them have a mental health component to them that we can actually discern. That's one of the things that I think that there's probably shared interest here, and we're trying to figure out, like, is there something that's growing, staying the same? And that's one of the points that I would love to see.
Thank you, Councilmember Halliburton. And if I could just add a couple of points to that. As you see these critical incident reports come out, if you are seeing things that are not as robust as you would like to see them, or you are thinking of things that I've not thought to include in these reports, I would very much appreciate that feedback. What I'm trying to do is provide a thorough document for the public and for you. And so this is a work in progress, and every report that we finish, I get really good feedback from Boise Police Department, and I get great feedback from our investigator. And so we are all about, there's nothing we can't do better. And we hope this to be a living document that just improves and improves. Speaking also to the mental health component, that is one thing that I am really excited to address with some of these data points. And from speaking with the experts, what I am learning is that we should be collecting data from the time of the day that the call came in, how many officers responded, how long did it take them to get there, what was the first interaction. And you see what I mean, like breaking this down into this minutia. And as we track those for every single one, what can we find at the end when we put all of that data together? And there might be some lessons learned that really informed best practices when responding to a crisis call.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just good work to you and your team. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Nicole, thank you for the presentation. I just want to commend you for the format on these reports. I think what you're going to be providing, the transparency around continued improvement and best practices is exactly what we need. I think you've demonstrated that the status quo is that the officers are operating within their legal authority when they use force. But I think there's a great deal of overlap between what is legal and what is preventable or avoidable, and demonstrating we understand that BPD is working on continuous improvement, especially around these critical incidents, but demonstrating that to the public by showing what measures are being taken in those incidents that may be legal, but may also be preventable or avoidable in the future. I think that's exactly the kind of transparency that we need. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council President Nash. And to that point, I think you're exactly right. Like if in these reports, if I can help council and the public understand the decision-making by that officer and how they approached the call, how they executed all of their resources and options and planning is really helpful. It helps identify how we can do things better in the future, but also I think it recognizes those officers who are doing an exceptional job. If you look back to that very first report that was issued, it's referenced by the name Manny on our website. That officer did an exceptional job of meeting that individual in the community where they were, exceptional de-escalation techniques, and all of those things. It still ended up in a critical incident. But it demonstrates and recognizes the officers who are doing exceptional work out there, and also will highlight those areas in which we can just do better. So thank you. And I look forward to taking a deep dive on every one of these and see how we can move forward and how we can maybe affect some of those things upstream.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Director. That was an excellent presentation. I have a couple of questions. You listed several community partners that you've been reaching out to, which is phenomenal. I didn't see the West Ada School District on there, and I wanted to see if that was an oversight or if you had reached out to them.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Willetts. I have not reached out to them yet. I have this long list, and I am probably 3/4 of the way through the list that was that both mayor's office and some community members helped me identify. They are on the list. I have not gotten to them yet, but I am positive by the time I meet with council again next fall, I will have met with the West Ada, excuse me, school district and have something to report on that.
Thank you. I think that's important that we don't forget about West Ada, and that when we think about Boise School District, we're also thinking about West Ada School District. And then as a follow-up, one of the things that we talked about over the last 18 months is the backlog in complaints and inquiry, and you've gone through a little bit how it can be difficult to judge. I'd like to just get clarity about where we are with the backlog and just put a finer point on that, please.
Councilmember Willetts, I'm happy to do that. So at this point, we are current on all complaints, and that is through the incredible efforts of Kathy, our case administrator. She has worked tirelessly and more hours than I think she originally bargained for to do that. So in addition to getting those complaints current is thinking about regularly how we're doing business. She put it really well the other day, building the airplane while we're flying. So in addition to addressing all of the complaints and making sure everybody had communication from this office, particularly when there was a gap in leadership for this office, I shouldn't say that, not gap in leadership, but that we had an interim director, making sure that those individuals received timely correspondence once we got in office. And then also to make sure that they understood what the action was from the Office of Police Accountability. And then to also, maybe most importantly for the data side, think about how we're entering this information into our system so we can track and report back. So that's the complaint side of it. With the critical incident side, by the time we issued the 3 in March and the 2 in April, we will be current with all of those that are currently in our office for review. There are 4 outstanding critical incidents that have not been completed, so those are not in our office yet. Those can come in anytime, and they don't necessarily come in order of the date that they occurred, because there are different critical incident task force agencies that do the investigation. Sometimes investigations and some take longer than others. They also need to wait for the prosecuting attorney's review, and that sometimes takes time. And then, of course, the third part of that is the coroner's report, and that also takes time. So all 3 of those have to be done before they come to our shop, and they don't come in order. And I can sometimes see when they're coming and sometimes not. So at this point, with the 2 that get issued in April, we will be current. That may not be true in a week if we get some more. That would add 1 more to the to those that are stacked in the queue.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Well, Nicole, thank you. And Kathy as well. Thanks so much for your work for the presentation today, the update. Look forward to seeing these reports issued shortly. It's almost March.
Yes, yes,
And-
we are on the final touches of the 3rd one.
And the continued presence that you have in the community that you pointed to, as well as the work to prepare the annual report with more information for all of us to weigh 6 months from now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. Pleasure to be here with you.
All right, I see Andrea Cantor up. Andrea is joining us to discuss food truck and farmers market regulations. Out of there.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Nice to see you all again. For the record, Andrea Cantor. I'm the Economic Development Advisor in the Mayor's Office. I'm here today to present on food licensing that the Mayor's Office, in conjunction with the Clerk's Office, have been coordinating on to affirm some direction from Council. Today, we'll be reviewing kind of 2 topics under one presentation. So first, we're going to talk about food trucks, and then we'll kind of pause and move on to public markets. Let's try this thing. There we go. So first, this is kind of an economic development project just because these issues impact small businesses. And then to set the stage for the discussion, I'll highlight the purpose of the proposed changes, which are really to help streamline our current processes and work to improve the customer experience when it comes to licensing. The Mayor's Office received feedback over the past several months from constituents indicating that parts of our licensing provisions are unclear and sometimes burdensome, so we hope to address some of these issues. So our first topic today is food trucks. Food trucks are a bigger part of the class of businesses defined and referenced in city code as mobile eating and drinking establishments, but I'm going to reference just mainly food trucks in the presentation, since that's where we heard the most about code issues, and that's what we're most kind of familiar with. There are other types of businesses that fit within this category, such as coffee carts, hot dog stands, and ice cream trucks. They all kind of roll up into that mobile eating and drinking establishment. But again, I'm really going to kind of speak to food trucks. A little background on why we're presenting these code updates. We heard from the community that licensing for food trucks is kind of unclear. And due to this confusion, there have been limited compliance from these businesses obtaining the needed licenses. There are also kind of main 2 types of licenses needed for food trucks from the city, which is called the Eating and Drinking Mobile License, which is really a business license, and also a vendor license for individuals, which we'll get into. So a little bit bigger picture, food trucks are required to obtain between 3 to 4 licenses, of which most are issued by the city. A food truck would need an eating and drinking mobile license. Then individuals working in the truck need to have a vendor license, which currently require a background check. And some trucks also require a fire department inspection And this is not to mention kind of the appropriate licenses needed from Central District Health. If operators do not obtain these licenses, they're considered non-compliant and may be cited by code enforcement. The two licenses outlined in the blue boxes are really kind of the main focus today. That's what we received the most input on, and we don't really plan any changes for those listed in the gray box. To get into the two licenses, first we have the eating and drinking mobile license. This is seen as a duplicative license by users. This is because food trucks and other mobile vendors are required to obtain this license from the city, which just mainly confirm that they have a health district license. So they're coming to us just to confirm that they have a license from elsewhere. And we see it as the licenses from the health district already regulate the range of food vendors for the purpose of health and safety, which is why they have their own license. In the next slide, I'll kind of talk about the details of the next one, the vendor license. So currently, food trucks are classified as a vendor, which are part of a tier 2 business and code. We have different tiers, and each tier, example, a tier 1, tier 2, have different requirements like whether a background check is needed. If the vendor license was reclassified to a tier 1 license in this instance, the requirement for a background check could be eliminated. For context, brick and mortar restaurants are already classified as tier 1 businesses. So reclassifying vendors as a tier 1 business would remove the background check requirement for food trucks, aligning the licensing process more closely with brick and mortar restaurants. Examples of other 2-tier businesses for context, which we are not planning to change, include pawnbrokers, non-consent towing services, and precious metal dealers, which, background checks seem a little bit more relevant to the type of services being offered with those professions. So this kind of gets us to the recommendations for code changes specific to food trucks and the other mobile and eating drinking establishments, really to bring them in line with restaurants. So first, our recommendation would be to create a new category of vendor to consolidate the 2 licenses currently required into a single license. And this would effectively eliminate the eating and drinking mobile license, which again, just kind of confirms that a user has a license from Central District Health. Next, a thought is to reclassify vendors as defined in Boise City Code to a tier 1 business, which again would kind of remove the need for the background check. And then last, kind of change the existing vendor license to a business license. So it's obtained for the business and not by each individual working in the truck. By keeping the vendor license, this preserves the requirement criteria from the applicant, like hours of operation and location. Even with these changes, folks would still need the proper licenses from Central District Health to protect kind of the hand washing, the food handling, the safety. So that would still be held up. So taking into consideration kind of any feedback, next steps for staff would be to kind of understand the fiscal impacts of any changes, work with the clerk's office to update kind of city code to reflect these changes, communicate with appropriate stakeholders, and then make changes to the city website to make sure that we communicate kind of how to apply and how these changes affect the users. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pause on this category, let you ask any questions if we have time, and then I can move on to the next one.
Thanks, Andrea. Go
Madam
ahead.
Mayor. Andrea, I think I maybe am just a little confused about the business license, vendor license switch. Can you maybe just explain that to me one more time? Maybe I wasn't focusing enough.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, thanks for that question. I actually think it's very confusing, so it's hard to explain. Basically, we have a business license that is attached to those that is registered, the entity that is running in this instance of food truck, and a vendor license is the person, the individual that's participating in there. So if I owned the food truck and was going to operate, I would get the business license. If I'm someone who's hired to then work in the food truck, I would get a vendor license. And we're exploring with the clerk's office, could we just require the business license, which still has different criteria to it, and also include a vendor component that says, like, if you're going to be operating this truck, where, when, can we hold you to cleanliness if there's any issues? So it is a little confusing, but I think there are some nuances in the code of why we'd want to do that. That would make it easier for businesses and potentially eliminate the number of licenses needed per food truck.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just following up on that, is there a larger cost with a business license versus vendor license, or is it relatively similar?
Great question, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. Let's see, the cost for a vendor fee is about $130 right now, and eating and drinking is about $40. So it likely would remain about the same in the cost to the user, but the fiscal impact could be we'd be obtaining less licenses from those folks.
Great. And Madam Mayor, I'll just maybe one comment. I really appreciate all the work on this. I was pretty happy to see some of these things come forward. This was something that folks were reaching out to us a lot about the last couple years, and simple is always better. And anything that's duplicative, the Central District Health thing, I think, is a challenge. And then I think the moving to a tier 1 also makes a lot of sense. I would say that a food truck's probably closer to a restaurant than a pawn shop. And so, finding those opportunities to simplify things are so important. I think especially for these food trucks, because a lot of these are younger entrepreneur, folks who may not have the ability to get a brick and mortar going. Maybe they have a refugee background and they're trying to figure out how to navigate all these different processes. And this is just such a great way for them to get started. So the simple, the better. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done on it.
Madam Mayor, Andrea, thank you so much. I know that strategic work can sometimes be hard to find the time for around the kind of like day-to-day hustle of your responsibilities. I love seeing the city reduce hurdles while still maintaining our standards. So thank you so much for putting the time into this. I think this is sounds like it's really going to help streamline the process.
Madam Mayor. Andrea, thank you very much. I had a question in regards to the background check, and it's more from a clarification side. If you know why we were having that background check and had a business been denied because of that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Corliss, that's a great question. I'm not sure I can speak directly to that. It's something we could follow up with you from the clerk's office if anyone's been denied because of that. But I think the thought behind it was unclear why we were requiring a background check in this instance, where a lot of times there's other agencies, other departments that are overseeing the regulations with that. If you're an offender, there's certain things that come with that are beyond kind of the health and safety related to food handling and running a food truck.
I'd say too, just on that, excuse me, I think this is an example of where new ways of doing business and starting a business didn't mesh up with old code. And so in an attempt to kind of fit a new way of doing business into the code that existed, some of these things were required. And the goal here is to really reflect, one, the importance of startups and the fact that there are more and more of them now. We want them because they can help grow businesses and maintain our standards, as somebody said. So create a system that works for a new way of launching businesses that is reflective of the desires the community has to have these, that events have to have these, that we have to have them, while maintaining those standards.
Yeah, I love seeing these food trucks and these things out there, and for a citizen to be able to start a business at a low cost and not having to have that brick and mortar. And just want to thank you for your work, Andrea.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
Andrea, I want to echo my thanks. The food trucks are really incredible incubators of small business, and they give folks an opportunity to be entrepreneurs and start out small and grow. I'm very curious if you've had the opportunity to talk about or talk to the folks that were published in the Statesman about the East Boise food truck. And they basically said in the article that they were frustrated by trying to navigate conflicting policy and financial burdens. And I know we're doing what we can here at the city, but I'd be curious if you've run this past their experience and if this would have made a difference.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willits, thank you for that question. Yes, the Switchback food truck park did have changed how they're going to do operations. Right now, it sounds like they're pausing their food truck park. We have had conversations with them and received feedback, but they were probably separate concerns than what we're presenting on today. There was some other nuances with that being in the Harris Ranch CID and some other overlays that impact how they have to operate. So I think that's something we'll continue to address with council, but slightly separate from what we're presenting on today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Sure. All right, Madam Mayor, members of the council, if we may,
Yeah.
we'll move on to the next topic. Thank you. All right, so here we are. Public markets are next. So we heard similar feedback from stakeholders about frustrations with the current code, which impact market organizers and the businesses that are part of them. Here's some background just kind of on public markets and concerns expressed. So currently individuals and businesses at public markets like farmers markets that prepare and or sell food are currently regulated and defined as restaurants in Boise City Code, which apply to most market participants, especially at places like the Boise Farmers Market. Being defined as a restaurant requires these individuals and businesses to apply for and hold an eating and drinking mobile license from the city of Boise. So this license was mentioned in the previous presentation as well. This license is in addition to the required licenses from health districts like Central District Health that already regulate food vendors for the purpose of health, safety, and site inspections. The eating and drinking mobile license just confirms possession of a Central District Health license, and the city just confirms that. And last, folks like the Boise Farmers Market and the Capital City Public Market, which combined have about 200 participants, feel this licensing requirement is duplicative and sometimes confusing to businesses and market staff, which we sort of addressed in the last conversation. Taking that all in consideration, we want to reduce the burden on individual businesses where applicable, which kind of brings us to these recommendations. This is specific to public markets. So first would be to amend the definition of a restaurant to include an exemption for individuals or businesses participating in a public market. This would remove the need for such participants to possess an eating and drinking mobile license. This exemption would be similar to an exemption presently in the code for fraternal organizations, churches, and private clubs, which do not serve or prepare meals more than once a week. So there's already an exemption in there. This could add public markets to that. Next, we're looking at kind of creating the definition of what is a public market and what falls within that. That would be exempt in the definition of a restaurant. And then last, we're kind of doing some consideration around, should we require special event permit holders to attest that individuals or businesses participating in the market have the required licenses? The thought here would be put kind of the responsibility on the event organizers versus the individual businesses. Currently, this city clerks would ask like the Boise Farmers Market to send a list of all their vendors. They then go through it to check for licenses and if they're compliant or not. This would move that responsibility to the market organizers to kind of do that and open up some time on the compliance side. So with that, the next steps look pretty similar. It would be to kind of just understand the fiscal impacts of these amendments, update city code by creating an exemption for public markets, and work to create a definition that makes most sense for these markets, communicate with appropriate stakeholders, and make changes to the city website to reflect and communicate these changes. One of the things we did hear from different stakeholders was it can be really confusing to know what type of license you need, but then to get to the city website and figure out how to navigate it, where to click, where to apply. So that would be something that we would address outside of this as well. It's just that kind of customer experience of navigating the licensing portal. And with that, that concludes 2 topics and 1 presentation. So I'll stand for questions on this or the overall theme of food licensing.
Madam Mayor, quick question. What has the feedback been from farmers markets and the capital market? Are these changes things that they have identified would be really helpful?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, thank you for asking. Yes, we work directly with the Boise Farmers Market and Capital City Market on these code updates. In fact, these came directly from them, and this is us responding to their desires and needs and trying to figure out how that best makes sense related to our code.
Absolutely great. Thank you. And thank you for the effort in putting a new definition for markets. I know that that's always a lot of extra work and sometimes it's easier just to find another box, but sometimes there isn't another box. And so in this case, I really appreciate the extra work that's gone into that.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Hey, Andrea, just quick feedback. Thanks again for working on this. This is a gem that we have in Boise. I know I speak for myself and others that when you have friends and relatives come into town, you take them downtown. You go to the Saturday market, you go to the Capitol Market, and it's an incredible thing. And so the more we can do to help, incubate and accelerate that experience, I think just contributes to our cities even more. So thanks for your hard work.
All right. Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. We've got Council President Nash setting up for the next session. We'll just break for a couple minutes while he does that. All righty, welcome back. Sorry for the delay. I got not grabbed, pulled, whatever, queried by some staff when I was in the other room.
You ready? Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. For the record, Colin Nash, Boise City Council President. Today I'm presenting to you council's, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, I can speak directly into it. Today I'm presenting to you council's strategic priorities. We're really excited of what we have to share. A lot of these things in here are the things the city is doing, things we'd like to maybe amplify a little bit more, or seek more information on. And we've had feedback from all of city council, and we'll jump right into it. No surprise, the buzzword affordable housing was the leading priority among city council members, and I think that bears out in my conversations with members of the public repeatedly, and in public surveys that I've seen, that the cost of living as it relates to housing, with the type of demand that we've seen in Boise, continues to be an issue. And we want to continue the work that's been done over the last several years related to the development of further affordable housing. And I think key in that is our first point, which is identifying a sustainable funding source for the good work that's been done to create affordable housing, both to preserve existing affordable housing and maybe even deliver incentives for existing landlords to make their properties affordable, but also the development. I think we've seen, especially with the recent partnership on with Ada County on the McKinney El Dorado affordable housing development, that the city can deliver affordable housing at very efficient means. And we'd like to continue those types of partnerships into the future. And we know that funding will be the key ingredient to ensuring that work continues over the next several years. Additionally, council would like to better understand the city's comprehensive approach to unhoused residents and those coordinated response efforts, so that as opportunities come up for council to act and continue to make that a priority, that we're well versed in what the city is doing and where we can improve on our response to the unhoused. Additionally, those of us that were on council are very proud of the work that we've done around the zoning code. And we want to better understand what its impacts are going to be over the next year, so that as we come up on that review, we are well situated to make changes accordingly to better meet the goals of that, which included increasing our housing supply to meet that demand, so that we can deliver the affordability and grow in the way that we'd like to see the city grow. Additionally, we've been very energized by the applications that we've seen come through. Don't know a current total. I think we've heard in the 50s and 60s of applications that the city has received regarding accessory dwelling units since the new zoning code was implemented. This was a passion project of mine, both at the legislature and the changes that we were able to make to the zoning code to enhance the development of ADUs. We think the city, we'd like to see the city double down on that and explore further ways to incentivize and partner and educate residents on how they could develop ADUs. I've also had a great deal of stakeholder outreach about the development of ADUs and what the city could do. One example, pre-approved plans that would be repeatable on these developments so that every time PDS gets an application, it's not something new to them and they have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Additionally, we see great opportunity with the OPER to be able to review the historic and design requirements so they best support the goals around the zoning code. And Madam Mayor, with your permission, I'll have council members speak to some of these. So Councilmember Stead, could you kind of speak to some of your goals and ambitions around this review and what you see as council's role in that?
Yeah, thank you, Council President Nash. So to expand on this bullet point, I'd love to see the city conduct a new historic survey so that we know what's worth fighting for and what isn't. It's been many decades since this has been done, and which means that we're often working with inaccurate information. I live in a historic home and I want to protect the unique charm of our city. And we regularly see appeals at the council level where our goals and the historic district and our commitment to environmental stewardship are at odds. We want to protect the past, but not at the expense of the future. How can we translate these shared and sometimes conflicting values into our policy? I look forward to a robust community engagement process to find these answers. For example, is there a natural looking vinyl product that can reduce the environmental impact, especially in windows facing internal to the property? I look forward to collaborating with the community and the staff and the mayor on this project.
Thank you, Councilmember Stead. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to that. I think those of us who've been on council that have seen an appeal from time to time, that maybe the only reason we're actually enforcing that is because it's what the code says, but maybe not be consistent with other public goals that we have around design or historic districts. Additionally, I think folks were really excited by the presentation that we got on pathways. I think dollar for dollar, these feel like really impactful opportunities in our districts. And we look forward to more work on that. To the extent that funding is a barrier in that, we'd like to continue to explore ways that we could prioritize funding for pathways. So we're open to conversations about what that could look like, including tax support. Additionally, we have a vision for what a relationship with Ada County Highway District could look like. And if I could cede some time to Councilmember Halliburton to talk about his vision for that, which is shared by council.
Thank you, Council President. I mean, you can see some bullet points that are up here. I think one of the things that has been extremely helpful for City Council in the past is working in close proximity to ACHD, so that when we see applications, we know that we're on the same page. And the first bullet point there is really making sure that ACHD staff members are present for both city council meetings and planning and zoning meetings as needed. Not sure exactly what that looks like, how we might be able to request it, but when they're in the room, we're able to make more informed decisions and able to communicate with the public. I think that this will be helped out by our modern zoning code and some of those early check-ins, but making sure that we have those. And in the same vein, that we're offering those to ACHD as well, so that when they're having these important meetings that they have a staff member from the mayor's office, a council member there if needed, and that we have a very clear way that we can be requesting and engaging those things as much as possible. The quarterly meetings I think are great. We had a great one this last time. And I think that we want to continue to see those and see those a little bit more regularly, but also making sure that when we're doing those, that council has input on what some of those issues may be that we want to discuss, some of those bullet points that we're seeing again and again. And then I think also CCDC sort of, in that same example, we want to make sure that we're all working together. We had some conversations at our last meeting where we were talking about 15th and 16th Street, and we, could have had CCDC in the room maybe at the same time. And so just the closer that we can be working together with ACHD, CCDC, and the city of Boise, and sometimes our other jurisdictions as well, I think will just make our application process so much easier for the public and for ourselves when we're making these hard decisions.
Thank you, council member. Additionally, we want to just indicate our continued support for Valley Regional Transit and airport improvements. I can speak louder. Following up on a clean city for everyone, council member Jordan Morales is not here with us, but he would want me to emphasize that his support for the city's efforts around identifying funding for geothermal modernization, which we know the city is actively working on with other partners, and we would applaud and encourage that. We think that's a valuable resource for delivering on a clean city for everyone, and we're happy we have it and we want to keep it. Additionally, exploring the expansion of the compost program to multifamily developments. And then I'll let Councilmember Kathy Corliss speak to the assured water supply and that's its importance to us.
Thank you, Council President Nash, Mayor. This has been a topic of conversation for a long time, of course, and it's not unique to Boise alone. I applaud the work that we did in the modern zoning code to have this section of the assured water supply, and anxious to see how this is going to move forward in application. I think even recently we've had some more discussions on definitions, which will be very helpful, I think, for developers. And with that is also looking at the surrounding areas. I know we talk about assured water supply, I think, in the developments, but to make sure we're looking at those areas and kind of keeping just a monitor on those in the city who are currently drawing their water from wells. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stead, could you speak briefly to kind of what your vision is for engaging with the public on kind of climate impact supported decisions and that kind of thing?
Yes, thank you, Council President and Mayor. I think this is similar to the ADU engagement where, we want to streamline these processes for our residents. Let's provide the information that we can so that they have access to things that would help, that help them in their own residence. So, for example, the city has some really lofty climate goals that we're on track to hit or exceed, which is really wonderful. But we can't do this alone. We need the residents to come with us in that journey. And so what can we do as a city to provide those resources for them so that so that residents can make their own decisions on how to better green their own homes one step at a time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a gentleman who he shared to me, I am a very Republican and I don't believe in a lot of this stuff, but I really believe in the city's compost program and I just need to know that I'm having an impact. Can you tell me what's the impact I'm having? So I think people want to feel involved and they want to feel like what they're doing matters. And I think the city could play a role in helping educate for more proactive involvement in meeting some of these goals that we have. Moving on to public safety. When it comes to police, there's a lot of interest around understanding what is clearly a moving target on police recruitment. It seems like I'm getting bombarded with police retirements. They'll seem to come in groups with the classes that have entered. And we want to better understand what that moving target is and how we can be supportive in making sure that our staffing levels are where they need to be, where our facilities are at. We'd like better understanding around the plans that the city has around where officers are located and what roles we'd like them to take as we move forward towards creating a safe city for everyone and maintaining a safe city for everyone. Obviously, we've demonstrated our support for the Office of Police Accountability and the good work that Nicole McKay is doing there. And we just want to emphasize that and remain supportive of that work. And we're excited of what she presented today, and we'll look forward to future presentations. Especially around mental health. This is a conversation that came up a lot. What is being done? What resources exist? Where are gaps in the continuum of care around mental health resources? Additionally, understanding how the city approaches issues of sexual and domestic abuse, both from a a police perspective, but also the city prosecutor's office, which is responsible for prosecuting misdemeanor domestic violence claims, and understanding what support services exist for those victims, and how the city can identify what gaps may exist for folks that are affected by this. When it comes to fire, council would like to iterate its support for exploring the benefits and costs in operations around 4-person minimum staffing in our EMS response. Additionally, we'd like to review the status of the effort and evaluate data on how to best move forward with this regarding our public safety needs. So as conversations continue, we'd like to be a part of that and encourage the continued exploration of those staffing needs. Additionally, when it relates to code enforcement, we want to make sure that when we are imposing conditions or that we are passing ordinances, that we're doing this in a way that is realistic for code enforcement to be able to actually enforce. And as we receive constituent inquiries about code enforcement needs, that we have the resources in the clerk's office available to be able to respond promptly to this. Opportunity in engaging everyone. Again, this is the first bullet point here. This is while it's supported by all of council, really a leading issue that Councilmember Morales cares about and would have me emphasize about understanding what the city can do to continue the developed expansion of in-house childcare. Did a lot of great work in the zoning code on this, and we want to better understand what else could we do around this. Additionally, I think there was some good work done around how we process applications for background checks, and we just like to keep the ball rolling because we understand that childcare is both expensive and hard to find right now, and critical to helping families stay in the workforce and maintain good paying jobs to support their families. Councilmember Stead, would you like to speak to the economic development portion here and kind of what you see as the city's role in that?
Yes, thank you, Council President and Mayor. I think that it's vital that the city does what we can to encourage and support high wage jobs here in the city. So the work that was done by council in the city with Micron recently was a shining example of that. And I think that there are other opportunities to connect with our local corporations on expansion, and then even other corporations when they're looking at relocation or job placement. I think one other example is, if this Kroger Albertsons merger goes through, if some stores are divested to CNS, can we work with them to encourage them to keep jobs here in Boise that might otherwise go elsewhere? So just really trying to do what we can to drive the income rate and really encourage opportunity for our residents wherever possible. I think that this goes hand in hand with even the childcare expansion too, because not only do folks need childcare as they head off to their jobs, but also this drives additional opportunities for folks if they're running businesses out of their homes.
Thank you. When it comes to libraries, I would say the sentiment around the facilities review is we are eagerly anticipating what comes of that. So to the extent that the library board working with the contractor could provide that by year's end, that would be a great Christmas present for Boise City Council. Councilmember Corliss, could you speak to, we've had some conversations about how council can better engage the public, and you've also looked at some best practices in other regional city councils. Could you kind of speak to your vision for what a council that engages everyone looks like?
Yeah, thank you, Council President Nash, Mayor. We've moved to this new districting model for a while. Well, we've been here a little bit, and we're talking about the best practices to outreach for our community that also ensures that we have cohesion, because while we all may be voted in by a district, we are serving all of the city. And I think we all feel that same way. So we want that cohesion as we go out into the community, to have newsletters and town halls that look and feel the same, but yet can have that specific information that may be a little bit different to each of our districts. So I think our goal here, again, is to have cohesion and to continue with the view and the mindset that we are one city, we represent one city, and we will do some little bit deeper dive into our districts through these town halls and newsletters.
Thank you. That's kind of our next priority after presenting this to you, is really diving in and enacting our vision for what that community outreach looks like. So in the next 2 months, I think the community will start to see that outreach in new ways. And we just want to thank previous councils for giving us the staff to be able to do that. And so I just want to offer my thanks that I think we're headed in the right direction given the staffing that we have now. Healthy city for everyone. This was we had a lot of conversations about parks and what is priority in our districts. And this is less of a grab bag of priorities and more of what is the one thing in the district that might be a logjam to having other priorities funded. And I just want to thank Councilmember Halliburton for kind of his vision for how to frame this, and I'd defer to him to kind of speak more to how we should be looking at the development of parks and pathways in our districts. And yeah, if you could speak to that.
I don't think it's a secret that everybody is supportive of more parks and completed parks in their neighborhoods, their districts across the city. You know, I think one of the challenges that we sometimes see is when we have large uncompleted projects, they do create sort of a logjam effect. Finishing Spalding Ranch would not only be great, you know, for the entire city, but all of a sudden it would open up some additional funds for us to really be looking at these other big projects that maybe we're not able to explore until these are completed. I think one of the things that would be really helpful for council is to look at some of, and there's some good examples that are up here, these projects that we know are large projects, large dollar amounts, and really trying to figure out like what that total is. What would it take us to actually complete our major projects that we've already committed to? Knowing what that dollar amount would be, or rough dollar amount would be, so that we could really create a plan towards getting these finished, so that we could move forward on bigger things. You know, and some of those are in different districts, but I would say that like they serve all of our districts. You know, I'm going to go to Spalding Ranch and be able to use all sorts of different things there, even though I'm on a whole different side of town. I'm going to look forward to taking my niece and nephew to Alta Harris playground once that's completed, even though that's not in my district. And so there are some things here that are in corresponding districts, but they're really things that serve our entire community. And if we could get some of these big ones that people have been waiting for finished, I think that really opens the doors. But first, I think council needs a really a good understanding of what it would actually take to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Halliburton. Yeah, I think what would be most helpful to us when it comes to like prioritizing these types of projects or understanding kind of where the city's head is at is just to have that review from Parks and Recreation to understand what is the dollar amount on some of these. We know that some of these projects, I think one of them, McDevitt Park, there's money set aside. It's been set aside for years, but we know that the costs have changed probably since that happened. Obviously, south in Old Pools, there's serious movement there, and we appreciate the what we're seeing on that front, and look forward to being able to have some actionable information on that later this year. Other priorities that we have, we'd really like to have a handle on the city's plan for capital project development and be able to work with mayor and staff on understanding capital project priorities before budget setting happens. I think what this would look like is understanding what pools or resources would be available, what the prioritization is for capital projects, both in parks and public works and elsewhere. Be having these conversations before we get into the budget work session so we can understand the calculus that goes into the development of those capital projects. Additionally, we'd like to understand and maybe have a review or analysis of current staffing levels and employee compensation to ensure they align with the city's operational needs. How are we thinking about compensation in these roles, and what is the actual staffing levels that we need to have a strong and functioning city? So, any council members, anything you'd like to add to that? Okay, all right. Any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Councilman?
I might add one thing. I think sometimes explicit instructions are better than vague ones when they can be. One of the things I think that we were really excited to see last week was a presentation about the Pathways Master Plan and some of the projects that were being put forward. And I think one of the things that we noted from unanimously from council was that, like, these projects are great. What will it take for us to get more? And as we go into the budget planning process, I think what we would like to see, and I don't know that there's a specific project, but high feasibility, low cost, what I would call, preliminary projects. This is like your gravel kind of pathway thing. What can we do now in a certain area with the funds that we have? And if we could look and see if there was any additional high feasibility, low cost projects, probably on the bench or in West Boise, I think that would inform our ability to think about funds. Funds, whether those are the addition of using general funds, council contingency funds, development impact fee funds, or even outside funds. And so I think we'd like to see our Pathways team see if there's any other projects that we think we could get done sooner than later, and include that in some of the budget planning process this year. In addition to that, I think one of the things that we see an opportunity for is to continue to explore ways to use grant funds that may be out there for these particular projects, and potential partnerships and partnership building strategies with some of our key stakeholders, our irrigation districts, canal companies, rail corridors, power line companies, and seeing if there's some even collaborative grants that we might be able to be working on together to help fund some of those as well. So I guess kind of summarizing, having our Pathways Plan team come back to us, seeing if there's another high feasibility project in probably the Bench or the West Boise area where we think that there might be some, and seeing what we might be able to do in this coming year's budget with them.
Well, thank you. I think that's it. I appreciate the presentation. I know the public does too. And really that's the most important piece. I look forward to working on all of this and more with all of you. And we have actually planned to, in response to some of these requests, we plan to do a capital improvement plan 101, if you will, with council so that there's greater clarity and transparency around the years of planning and the types of fees, like impact fees, and when they come in and why it is that, projects are planned however far out to accumulate those fees, so that there's understanding of that before we head into the budget meetings in June, as well as the parks planning process somewhat separately from that. It feeds into the capital improvement plan, but I think it'd be really helpful for us all to have a conversation about the process of building a park from, property acquisition or property identification to acquisition, then all the way through to completion, as well as working. I'll ask my staff to work with your team to ensure that in all of these priority areas, we're connecting council members that want to work on these things with the work that the city's doing. Because with that, we can really amplify the impact that we have together. And so look forward to it. All righty. We have an exec. Here you go. Okay.
Have a motion on. Okay. I move that we move into executive session to discuss pending and probable claims under Idaho Code 74206 1B C D F I J.
Can we get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right, we'll be back at noon.